can see your faces also and recognize you, and that's very nice. Um, we we are here in Los Angeles, and you're in uh, North Carolina, most of you, or in Florida, or Tennessee, or Georgia, or other places all over the world. And that's a fascinating way that we are getting connected, even though we're so far away. We're actually, the truth of the Vedantic truth of the matter is that we are not far away. We are actually always um, in touch with one another. We are always connected in the divine. So I would suggest it's a little odd, with everyone muted, that I don't hear any sounds, any feedback, if everyone's listening or anyone's listening or not. But I guess if they're not muted, then it makes too much noise. Is that the problem? Okay, so let's start by just taking a moment or two to quiet our minds, and maybe we can think ourselves in the ashram and feel that we are sitting before the holy images of Sri Ramakrishna and Sri Sarada and Swami Vivekananda, and feel the holy atmosphere of the ashrama. And let's take a couple of deep breaths. Let us feel we are sitting together at the feet of Sri Guru Maharaj, Sri Ramakrishna. And let us chant together Om. 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 In Om, we are one, seated at the feet of our teacher, Sri Ramakrishna. And he is telling us, from time to time, my children, go into solitude and call on me. We have this wonderful opportunity now to be in solitude and call on the divine by whatever name. There we are one. There we are at peace. And there is not there, it is right here in our own hearts. The divine is shining, beckoning us to turn within and face the golden sun of truth, the undying light, which is our true nature. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So I thought I would talk today a little bit about when this pandemic situation started. It was really upsetting, and it still can be very upsetting. And I was thinking, why? What is it? Why we're Vedanta students? We shouldn't get upset by difficulties that happen when the going gets tough. Well, we're Vedantists. The tough should get going, and why should we get upset at all? And what is it? And I think one reason is that the world, the true nature of the world is being revealed to us in every moment, every day, in its stark truth. Just the fact that this world is impermanent, and it is changeful, and it is uncertain. This is actually the nature of this world we live in. And of course, as Vedanta students, we know this. We know that nothing stays the same. We know that everything changes. And yet we also know that there is the changeless and that we are one with the changeless. Our true nature is undying. We know that intellectually. But I think this pandemic situation forces us to examine how far we have internalized that, and how as far as we are getting really upset with the situation, that far maybe we haven't really internalized it. We haven't made this truth our own. Uh, we like to feel that things have at least a relative permanence about them, and we treat them as such. Uh, Everything, of course, is constantly changing, and but mostly things change slowly. Our hair slowly turns gray. Our hairline slowly recedes. Ah, hmm? The back gradually hunches over as we get old. Wrinkles gradually appear, but you can't notice it. When did a wrinkle first appear? All of us who are over probably 40 can see some wrinkles on the face. But when did that wrinkle first come? Well, hard to say. And suddenly I started noticing it. It's and then suddenly there are two or three. So this is called subtle impermanence. Things change so slowly that we don't notice day to day that things are changing. Uh, but if you look at the photographs from 5 years ago, you'll notice, oh my gosh, 10 years ago, oh my gosh, look, my hair was all black back then. Now it's all become gray. Uh, so we see it when we look back. And then there's also the gross impermanence. You can say we drop a glass on the ground and it shatters into smithereens, right? Or we get into a car wreck and the car is totaled, and it's destroyed immediately. Or someone close to us suddenly dies of a heart attack or of COVID. These changes happen quickly. So this we can call as gross impermanence. Now, in this pandemic situation, we see a widespread demonstration of gross impermanence. Suddenly, everything is changed. Millions of people have lost their jobs. Millions have become sick. Hundreds of thousands have died, and more are dying. And the economy has tanked. We can say the stock market had a big crash. Any one of us who has our retirement in the stock market, well, that suddenly that nice nest egg has become a little smaller. It's upsetting, and I propose that it's because we haven't truly come to terms with impermanence, and we're still at least counting on some permanence in this world. So we're always trying, always struggling to preserve everything, to keep things from changing. And I thought a perfect example would be the Declaration of Independence. If I don't know if anyone has been to Washington D.C. to the archives building there, and the founding documents of this country are preserved there, the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. The original documents are preserved there. They're on some kind of parchment, and they're placed in these, or we can say enshrined in these cases which are designed to preserve them for eternity. They're made of titanium with argon gas inside, which is entirely non-reactive, and moreover, they're placed on an elevator, a lift, which goes down under the building, and every night our founding documents of this country sink down into a vault underneath the archives that is designed to withstand a nuclear attack. So whatever may happen, these documents will remain. They will be preserved for eternity. And I laugh because we know that nothing lasts forever, and one day those boxes will just be filled with dust, unless the boxes themselves turn to dust first. But it's that's how I imagine it. So we strive to counteract the decay. No, we dye our hair, or in some cases we shave it off to hide the graying the graying strands. We have all kinds of lotions and potions for our wrinkles, and we're always fighting against entropy. Entropy, this many of you are scientists, you could probably explain it to me better than I can explain it to you. But this idea of entropy, which is the uh, this second law of thermodynamic states. Isolated systems spontaneously evolve towards thermodynamic equilibrium, the state with maximum entropy. So things tend to go into decay and disorder unless we resist it and we combat it. And the perfect example I can think of, have any of you been to, well, some of you must have been from Belur Mutt to Dakshineshwar by boat, and you go along the Ganges, pat 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 pat, and you go up to Dakshineshwar, and then you come back, and along the side of the boat, you can see all the buildings along the side of the Ganga. And there are, of course, some beautiful temples, well maintained, and the bathing ghats with the steps going down. And then you'll come across some building that has a tree growing on it, and the roots are breaking the bricks apart, and the whole building is just falling apart. And somehow in India, you see so many buildings like that that are just succumbing to the elements. And it's fascinating to see that. And it's such a good reminder that actually everything goes to that. Everything breaks down eventually. Everything decays in the end. So we try, and yet we're doomed to fail in this project of making the impermanent permanent, and then we suffer. Just imagine, brand new car, and then what happens? We get the first scratch. Ah, it was so nice and new, and that first scratch, it really hurts. That first scratch on the car hurts a lot. Or our favorite coffee mug, and one day we're a little careless and it drops to the ground and snaps the handle off, and we suffer. Why is it? We don't like impermanence. We don't. We object. It makes us profoundly uncomfortable. We shouldn't lose the things that we love, the people we love. So we suffer. And I think it's interesting, even in the language we use. I don't know how many times I've been asked, "Where are you permanently posted? What's your permanent posting? Have you come to Hollywood permanently?" And I always say, no, absolutely not. There's nothing permanent in this world. But we use that term. We want to get a permanent post or a permanent position with the firm. And we have permanent adhesive and a permanent marker to mark things. And I'm a permanent resident, and we're best friends forever. So diamonds are forever. Maybe nothing else is, but diamonds are forever, right? So the most amazing thing, and Yudhishthira, the great uh, paragon of dharma in the Mahabharata, when he was asked by the Yaksha, what is the most amazing thing in this world? He gave this answer, and I think you know it, but I'm going to chant the Sanskrit mantra. Ahanyahani bhutani gachanti hayamalayam sheshastavaramichanti kimascharyamatah param. What could be more amazing? What could be more wonderful, in a sense, or amazing or strange on this earth? Uh, every day, people are dying around us. Every day, people are dying. And yet, people think, not me. Not me. So this is Maya. And we can't do better than turn to Swami Vivekananda to read his quote on Maya. So on death. Then there is the tremendous fact of death. The whole world is going towards death. Everything dies. All our progress, our vanities, our reforms, our luxuries, our wealth, our knowledge have that one end, death. That is all that is certain. Cities come and go, empires rise and fall, planets break into pieces and crumble into dust, to be blown about by the atmospheres of other planets. Thus it has been going on from time without beginning. Death is the end of everything. Death is the end of life, of beauty, of wealth, of power, of virtue too. Saints die and sinners die. Kings die and beggars die. They're all going to death. And yet, this tremendous clinging on to life exists. Somehow we do not know why. We cling to life. We cannot give it up. And this is Maya. From his talk, Maya and Illusion. It's such a powerful observation. And I've often mentioned that if we reflect even on this earth, this precious earth which we call our home, which seems so solid, even this will die. Even this earth will come to an end. Our sun, which provides all the energy for us, it's a fusion engine, hydrogen fusion engine. It's joining hydrogen into helium, and it's not an infinite quantity. When the hydrogen runs out, the sun burns out. But before that, it turns into a red giant, and it grows and grows and grows, and the outer extent of the sun is beyond the radius of our earth. So our earth will be absorbed into the sun and become nothing but a little cinder that's absorbed into the sun before the sun dies. So think about that. Even this earth is going to die. What to speak of ourselves? How do we come to terms with this? How do we embrace this this one certainty? No, the old saying that the only certainty is death and taxes. Benjamin Franklin made it famous, apparently. How do we embrace this? How do we come to terms with this? Religions offer various answers. I'd like to especially consider the two Eastern approaches. Both Vedanta and Buddhism have taken up this problem, this issue of impermanence, and both offer approaches to it. And we'll touch a little on the Buddhist approach before we come back to Vedanta, because it's also we can learn a lot from Buddhism, though we might disagree a little bit with the final conclusion. Buddhists emphasize the impermanence of all phenomena, everything that happens, including our minds and our thoughts. All are recognized as being impermanent, and at the same time recognizing the interdependence of everything. And in recognizing this lies enlightenment, awakening to our Buddha nature. In recognizing that on the one hand, everything is impermanent, and yet it is also interdependent. So, of course, Vedanta, on the other hand, finds that everything is impermanent, including also the mind and thoughts, just like Buddhism. And at the very end of this analysis, Vedanta takes the other road, which says that we find within the impermanent, within the changing, we find the changeless. Within, behind the impermanent, we find the permanent, the unchanging, the ground of being, the self, Brahman, Atman, the changeless, infinite bliss, Sat Chit Ananda. So if we can come to a deep acceptance of the fact of impermanence, it frees us, it can free us to a great degree. Free us from fear and embrace it. Now, let's look at the other side. If it weren't for impermanence, if it weren't for change, we could never watch our children grow up into young men and women. I see Taruni there getting sleepy. If there was no such thing as impermanence and change, she would stay like that forever. But she's going to grow up into a young woman, and then she's going to most likely become a mother herself, and hi, and all of that. So without impermanence, how could we get rid of a bad habit? I can't I can't quit smoking. It's just the way I am. Well, no. What we think we are, that's also impermanent and will change, and we can freely give it up. Hmm? So it cuts both ways. If it cuts both ways. One of my little hobbies is to take pictures of photographs, and I try to photographs of flowers, and I try to take at least one flower photograph a day on my morning walk. And now that we all have a camera in our pockets and with a remarkably good lens, so I try to get close and get some flower, preferably a new one that I haven't seen. And today I found one on a kind of a cactus-like plant, beautiful, tiny little yellow flower. And why are flowers so enticing? Why are they so beautiful? I think from this very dull little bud bursts forth this kind of magic uh, expression of perfect beauty, shall we say, an expression of perfect beauty, of perfect symmetry, and perhaps of uh, delightful fragrance bursts out and graces this world for a day or for 2 or 3 days, and then again it fades. Something about the impermanence of the flower adds to its beauty. We find it so beautiful because it's impermanent, because it's we know that it's fleeting. So we can, when we look at a flower, we just appreciate it in that very moment because we know that it's a moment which will come to an end. But in that moment, when we are with that blooming flower, that blossoming flower, we can see eternity. What's the poem? Someone will have to remind me. So to really see the beauty of a flower, we have to be right here. We can't think about, oh, it's going to fade. We don't, usually when we look at a flower, we don't think, oh, it's going to fade, it's going to die. Yet we know it. It's going to die. It's going to fade. Similarly with other people, with our friends and our family. We're all like flowers manifesting the divine in our blossoming. And we can appreciate that if we can be right here in the present. If we hold on, if we say, no, you mustn't change, then we don't see the person. So we can be grateful for impermanence. And in that, we can start to live more fully in the present moment. Since every moment passes, we can be right here in this present moment. And that is a life of freedom. If we apply this to our mental states, so often when a powerful mental state comes upon us, it's very difficult to separate ourselves from it. If we become angry, say, or lustful, or uh, extremely filled with grief, it fills our whole mind and we become identified with that anger or that grief, and we don't see any other way. We forget that I am not grief, I am not anger. This is a temporary state which has come over my mind, and it shall not pass forever. It shall not last forever. It comes and then it goes, and we can let it go. We can remember this too shall pass. Of course, what we want is for when we become happy, we think, let me be happy always. And when we're sad, we think, oh no, I don't want this. But we can go beyond both happiness and misery to a state of equanimity. There's a story, you know, the story of the ancient king he was a good man, but he was under the thrall of his emotions, and he was constantly swinging between a kind of elation and a despair. and something good will happen and he'd become elated, and then something difficult would happen and we would start to despair. And he realized this was a real problem for him. Now, he'd heard about a very wise old woman in the kingdom, a sage, who, so he called on her to come to the palace and give him some instructions. And he asked her, "Can you please help me overcome this? I'll give you whatever you want if you can help me overcome this terrible slavery to my emotions." And so she said, "Yes, it can be done. But nothing, this is so valuable that even your whole kingdom would not be payment enough. So I will give it to you without any payment." And so she told him she would be back in a couple of weeks. And when she came back to the king, she brought a beautiful carved box, a jewels box. And the king opened it and found a beautiful ring in the box. And on the ring were inscribed the words, "This too shall pass." And the sage told the king, "Wear this ring. And every time something happens, whatever it may be, look at the ring and read this inscription and remind yourself, this too shall pass." This moment that we are sharing together is a beautiful one. I love to see all your smiling faces. It's wonderful. And well, this too shall pass. But it's wonderful. Let it be now a moment of sharing. Buddha's first awakening, his powerful awakening came. When did it come? When he was faced with this fact of impermanence. His father had sequestered him in the palace. No, he was afraid that Buddha would become a monk. So he kept him in the palace, surrounded by all the good things, and he should never see any suffering. But he went out of the palace, and what did he find? He saw someone very sick. He saw someone very old. And he saw a dead body. Disease, old age, and death. So he realized in a very deep way that everyone has to face these. And that's when he started striving for illumination. And of course, we know that the rest of the story. He taught, based on this experience, he taught 5 things to reflect on, called 5 remembrances. And they are like this. I am of the nature to grow old. There is no way to escape growing old. Those of us who are already in advanced years, we know it for sure. But those of us who are, say, under 50, maybe under 40, maybe it's harder to accept this. We remind ourselves, I am of the nature to grow old, and I am of the nature to have ill health. Yes, disease will come. It's unavoidable. It's the nature of the body. Everybody gets sick from time to time. And probably when we go out, either we go out by an accident or we go out by an illness. So the illness will come. I am of the nature to die. There is no way to escape death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. And 5, he gave this idea of what does belong to us. My actions are my only true belongings. I cannot escape the consequences of my actions. My actions are the ground upon which I stand. Now, this could lead, if we think this way, this could lead to depression and anxiety. That's not the purpose. It's not the purpose that we should become depressed and anxious thinking about this. No, the purpose is that if we can come to accept it, if we can come to accept this truth, then it frees us. And that is our goal. If this can inspire us to strive harder for enlightenment, for realization, then it's a great blessing. And that's the purpose. I think all of us are seekers, so we can, remembering this, strive a little harder to find the permanent within the impermanent. Buddha doesn't go there. He says, become illumined, become awakened, all is change. But Vedanta, of course, we uh, we go one step a little bit different. Sri Krishna tells Arjuna, Matras parishastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkhadah agama paino nitya tantitikshasva bharata. So he says, these sensations, heat and cold, happiness and misery, they arise from the contact of the sense organs with objects. And they come and they go. Bear with them. Bear with them, Arjuna. They come and they go. They are anitya. They are impermanent. Vedanta begins, like Buddhism, with an examination of this world, and there's the practice of viveka, discerning between what is permanent and what is impermanent. The very first step on the path of jnana yoga, the path of uh, philosophical discernment, we can say, is nitya nitya vastu viveka, the discernment between the nitya and the anitya, what is uh, permanent, what is lasting, and what is impermanent and changeful. And of course, what happens is we find that, well, gosh, everything changes, everything is impermanent. And what the next step automatically comes, detachment. Detachment. When we recognize that everything is impermanent, we naturally become detached from it. It's a natural following. It follows naturally from proper practice of discernment. And that is wonderful. If we gain a little detachment in life, we gain a little peace also. Swami Vivekananda points out the ephemeral nature of this world in his talk, The Real Nature of Man. He says, the world vanishes in a moment and is gone. The hopes of a lifetime, built up little by little with all the energies of a great mind, vanish in a second. Every sense activity results in a reaction. Everything is evanescent. Enjoyment, misery, luxury, wealth, power, and poverty, even life itself, are all evanescent. Notice that he points out things both which we like and which we don't like. He says, enjoyment is evanescent, so is misery. Both are evanescent, both pass away. Two positions remain to us, he says. One is to believe with the nihilists that all is nothing. Then there's the other position, to seek for an explanation, to seek for the real, to discover in the midst of this eternally changing and evanescent world whatever is real. One of my favorite mantras from the Katha Upanishad, Swamiji used to chant it in his talks and translate it poetically, of course. Nityo nityanam chetanam eko bahunam yo vidadhati kama tamatmastham yo nupashyanti dhira tesham shanti shashvati netarisham. As Swamiji would translate this verse, he who sees in this world of manifoldness that one running through all, in this world of death, he who finds that one infinite life, and in this world of insentience and ignorance, he who finds that one light and knowledge, unto him belongs eternal peace, unto none else, unto none else. So yes, there is the changing. But who sees the changing? Who is aware of the changing? What is the changeless which forms the backdrop to the changing? Yes, the self, that infinite consciousness, which is our true nature. If we can touch that, if we can dive deep within and touch that, to us belongs eternal peace, Shanti Shashwati, and not to others. We won't find peace if we place our, if we put our, if we stand on our investments, and we stand on our family, and we stand on our house and our empires and all those things. We won't find peace. We find peace when we stand on the self. Swami Vivekananda gives an interesting simile of rivers and a whirlpool in a river, which looks to be a thing. If you see a whirlpool in a river, it seems to be a thing, but actually it's constantly changing. The water is constantly going into it and coming out of it. It's just a constant flow, but it seems to form a kind of an object. And he says that our bodies and minds are like that. The body and mind are continually changing, he says, and are in fact only names of series of changeful phenomena, like rivers whose waters are in a constant state of flux, yet presenting the appearance of unbroken streams. Every particle in this body, your body and my body, every particle in it is continually changing. No one has the same body for many minutes together. Yet we think of it as the same body. So with the mind, one moment it is happy, another moment unhappy, one moment strong, another moment weak, an ever-changing whirlpool. That cannot be the spirit, which is infinite. This infinite unit is unchangeable, immovable, absolute, and this is the real man, the real woman. Our reality, therefore, consists in the universal and not in the limited. So, it's an interesting experiment to see if we can think of our minds, which it's a constant flow of thought, isn't it? It's a constant flow of thoughts and sensations and feelings and desires and emotions, and uh, it's like a river or like a whirlpool. It's a little whirlpool in an ocean of consciousness. If we can disidentify ourselves a little bit with that stream, with that constant stream of thoughts, and recognize that who I am actually, I'm watching all those thoughts. I am separate. I'm sitting on the bank of the river watching the whirlpool. I am not the whirlpool. I am that which does not change. So the Vedantic approach is the emphasis is always on realizing who we are. Who are we really? Not the changing, but the changeless. The witness. And once we identify once we start to develop this Atma Bodh, this feeling that I am the self, the unchanging self, we can watch this universe as a show, as a panorama. We can watch it with joy. So is it practical? I know, yeah, we all heard, yeah, witness, yeah, okay. But we're struggling here in this world, and we have to fight in the office maybe, or we have to uh, fight with our relatives, and we have to fight to get our unemployment benefits, and we have to this world is a constant fight. What are you talking about? A show and a play? It's a fight. Hmm. Well, we need to get a little taste, at least, I think, a little taste in meditation. Get a little taste of that part of me which is not buffeted by emotions and by all the changes. And remind ourselves constantly this is passing. Touch our ring. This too shall pass. This is passing. I am the witness. When Swami Vivekananda was in Ridgely Manor, that was a glorious summer where he was there for many weeks, and a few close and fortunate people got to spend a lot of intimate time with him. And there was a woman named Maud Stum, who wrote some reminiscences of that time, that holy time in Ridgely with Vivekananda. And one night they had a dinner party, and they went all out. It means everyone wore their finest clothing and jewelry and makeup and you name it. They went for a great dinner party. And she relates this story. A very large and elaborate dinner was given at Ridgely. The flowers and lights on the table were wonderful, and the ladies all in their loveliest gowns and jewels. at a moment when the talk and gaiety had reached its height, and I was observing it all without at that instant taking part, thinking of the good fortune that made such a thing possible, and wondering if they all were as merry as they seemed. Swami Vivekananda, was seated just obliquely opposite to me, and all at once I heard his deep, even tones, as if right at my ear, and through all the noise of other talk. Don't let it fool you, baby. And I saw he had been observing me over the flowers and lights. Somehow, I love that in all this external excitement and beauty and glamour, and he said he used to call her baby. She says, baby was his nickname for me. Why, I do not know. Probably because she was very sweet and childlike, maybe a little naive. So he said, don't let it fool you, baby. So that's his message to us also. Don't let it fool you, baby. See all the fun, all the don't let it fool you. Mhm. So for the devotee, of course, this is a little bit more on the side of jnana. So for us devotees, we need a little jnana also. We need a little reminder that yes, I am the unchanging, the infinite. That is my true nature. But for the devotee, Sri Krishna tells us, Anityam asukham lokam imam prapya bhajasvamam. Having come into this loka, into this world, which is anityam, it's impermanent, and it's pretty rough. It's pretty tough going a lot of the time. Asukham, there's a lot of misery here. We see that. Having come into this world, which we see there is a lot of difficulty and misery. What should we do? Bhajasvamam, worship me. Worship me. Take refuge to me. Turn to me. Hold on to me. Turn away from the changing. Come running to me. I will give you shelter. I will give you rest. This is the shelter for the devotee, the feet of the Lord, the feet of the Divine Mother. Where else can we turn? And it's actually a great blessing, I think, this pandemic, because we realize that this world is very difficult right now. And where can we find shelter? We can run to Mother's feet. We can run to the Lord's feet. We know that those feet are undying. There we find a shelter which is safe, a true refuge. There's no refuge in this world. I'd like to turn to teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. He also very much emphasized the ephemeral nature of our experience in this world. He attributes it to Maya. I'll read a little quote from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. On account of his Maya, he says, the ephemeral appears as eternal, and the eternal as ephemeral. This is our mistake. We take the changing to be the eternal, and we forget all about the true eternal. This world is temporary. This moment it exists, and the next it disappears. But on account of his Maya, it seems to be true. It is only through his Maya that the idea I am the doer arises. That arises the idea all these are mine, my wife, my husband, my children, my brother and sister, mother and father, house and property. They're all anitya, he says, nitya and anitya. But he offers a way through. In Maya there are these two, he says, vidya and avidya. Avidya deludes one with worldliness, and vidya maya, wisdom, devotion, and the company of the holy, leads one to the divine. For one who by his grace has gone beyond maya, vidya and avidya become the same. So here he gives a wonderful hint that yes, in this world it's impermanent, but that doesn't mean that we entirely reject it. We see that there are elements in our lives that turn us towards the divine, help us go Godward. And there are things that really distract us from our spiritual life. So we hold on to Vidya. And he gives a hint. When we touch the divine, we are no longer affected by this world. And he gives two apt similes, the ant and the swan. He says, live in the world like an ant. The world is a mixture of sand and sugar. Be like an ant, take the sugar and leave the sand. And so this is a wonderful way of describing this practice of viveka, of discernment. Like an ant. Ants can easily, there's a mixture of sand and sugar. How would you, if you had a pile of sugar and sand mixed together, how do you separate them? Extremely difficult. But a team of ants would have no difficulty immediately removing all the sugar and leaving the sand. Like that is this world. It seems to be inextricably mixed. The nitya and the anitya, he says, the eternal and the ephemeral have become mixed like sugar and sand. Be an ant and take the sugar. Again, the world is a mixture of milk and water, the bliss of God consciousness and the pleasure of sense enjoyment. Be a swan and drink the milk, leaving the water aside. He used to say that the swan, that's the idea that the swan has a special enzyme that it secretes in its beak, and that enzyme curdles the milk, and then it turns into curds so that the swan can ingest it. And so, whether scientific, I'm not sure scientifically it's actually true, but this is the idea that we have in that Sri Ramakrishna has, that the swan can take this mixture of this world, which is a mixture. Yes, through it all is shining the joy of God consciousness, the bliss of God consciousness. It's here in this world, and at the same time, there's also a lot of sense enjoyment, which is a pale reflection of that supreme joy of divine consciousness. So the swan, well, we can be like a swan and take that delectable joy of our own true nature, which is the bliss of communion with the divine, and leave behind the those cravings for power and pleasure and wealth and all those things that make this world go round as it seems. So we interact with all, we live in this world, no doubt, but we perceive the impermanent behind it. We perceive behind the impermanent, we perceive the imperishable. We perceive the permanent. And taste the sugar. Drink the milk. Sri Ramakrishna did emphasize this tyaga, this detachment, but he was never a dry renouncer. Eat the sugar, drink the milk, drink the nectar of God consciousness. That's the joy. Sri Ramakrishna was always immersed in bliss, always immersed in joy, and yes, always talking of the divine, always singing, always meditating, and making fun. Even he would tell jokes and hang out with his young disciples, and sometimes he would cut jokes and make them roll on the floor laughing. Yes, because when we have the joy of the divine, it fills every nook and corner of our lives. I wanted to mention Sri Ramakrishna's teachings in the Gospel. One slight mistranslation in the often he very often speaks about the nitya and the anitya, and sometimes the translation by Nikhilananda in the Gospel is given as the unreal. That anitya is translated as unreal, and actually I feel it's not quite an accurate translation. It should be impermanent. Anitya means impermanent, and from the Vedantic standpoint, of course, impermanent means unreal. What we call real is that which is permanent and lasting. But I think it gives a slightly different turn to his teaching if we see that he's actually teaching not that the world is unreal, simply that it's impermanent. It has its relative reality, but it is impermanent. So Sri Ramakrishna, rather than emphasizing unreality like the hardcore Vedantists, the unreality of the world, he did not emphasize it. He emphasized rather, even though he reminds us that it's anitya, but he emphasizes the nitya and the lila, the play, the nitya, the eternal, the infinite, and the Leela, the play. So not so much as an impermanent uh, mess which we should just get out of and give up. No, it's mother's play. It's a play, and that changes the thing a lot. If we can look on this world of change not as something ephemeral, that unreal, something that we like a dream that we should just give up, but as a manifestation of the Divine Mother, as mother's play, as her Leela. So on the one hand, yes, it is an impermanent play. The play lasts just a few days, but it's mother's play. We can enjoy the fun if we can play with mother. And his conception of the divine is always true, as truly infinite as beyond all conceptions. So this world, this mother's play, and the infinite behind is beyond our wildest dreams to try to imagine. He would say, Jari Nitya, Tani Lila. To that to which the uh, Nitya, the unchanging, belongs, to that also belongs this Lila. So the divine is beyond both all our conceptions, even the conceptions of Nitya and Nila. Divine Mother is beyond those. The absolute is beyond all those. So it's what a conception, what a realization he has. He says, in this view, which was his mature view, God has become all that you see. The divine has become everything we see. It is like a bell fruit, he says. He gives the example, he used to give this example of a bell fruit, which has three parts: seeds, shell, and the flesh. The Nitya belongs to the same being to whom belongs the Lila. You cannot set aside the Nitya and understand just the Lila. And it is only because there is the Leela that you can transcend it step by step and reach the Nitya. How wonderful. We can't understand this Leela, this changing world, unless we understand that behind it is the Nitya, the infinite. And yet, in this Leela, we can transcend it. The Leela gives us the chance to transcend it step by step. So it's a very appealing approach to understanding this world, to looking on it as a play, as mother's play. And sometimes it's quite a mad play. Sometimes it's not mother's playground, it's mother's madhouse. But it's still mother's, and it's a play. It's a mad play. Hmm? And if we say with Swami Turiyananda, who objected to Sri Ramakrishna's description of this world as a play, he said, "But sir, this play is our death. We're dying here." And Sri Ramakrishna says, "Yeah, tell me, who are you? Who are you? It's all mother. Mother has become all this." Swami Vivekananda, in his famous letter to Francis Leggett, frankincense, as he used to joke with him, on 6th July 1896, he writes, "He, the playful one, is playing these tears and laughters over all parts of the play. It is a funny world, and the funniest chap you ever saw is he, the beloved infinite. Fun, is it not? Brotherhood or playmatehood, a school of romping children that how to play in this playground of the world, isn't it? Whom to praise, whom to blame? It is all his play." So that's Swami Vivekananda's approach. It looks like we've been talking almost an hour. Maybe I'll just wrap things up a little bit, and we can have a few minutes for some questions and discussion. Um, ah, this Swami Vivekananda gives yet another idea. Once they were camping in Camp Taylor, north of San Francisco, with a few of the close devotees, and Miss Bell was one of the devotees who was with Swami Vivekananda. And one day, after the meditation in Miss Bell's tent, Miss Bell remarked, "This world is an old schoolhouse where we come to learn our lessons." And we hear this a lot. When we have certain lessons we come to learn here. And even Swami Vivekananda sometimes seems to appreciate this attitude to a certain extent. But Swami Vivekananda said, "Who told you that?" Miss Bell couldn't remember. "Well, I don't think so." I think this world is a circus ring in which we are the clowns tumbling. And Miss Bell asked Swamiji, why do we tumble, Swami? Swamiji, because we like to tumble. When we get tired, we will quit. So this idea of a circus tent, a circus ring, and we are the clowns tumbling. So if we can hold on to that idea, then it's a fun. So let's see. Today we have talked. I have tried to maybe hammered on this idea of impermanence quite a lot, and this idea that why as long as we look on the impermanent as permanent, as long as we try to find something in this world to give us security, we are going to come up short-handed. And uh, this is simply the nature of things. If we can come to accept the nature of this world as impermanent, then almost paradoxically, it frees us. The more we can accept it, the more we can be okay about it. The more free, the less we worry about it. Okay, my bank balance has evaporated. That's the nature of bank balances. Okay, I am mother's child. I'm playing with mother. Mother has decided to evaporate the bank balance. All right. Mother has decided to take away some of my relatives prematurely with COVID. All right. That's the nature of the world. Doesn't mean we don't grieve, doesn't mean we, and it also doesn't mean we don't look after our house. Our house is okay. The nature of the roof is to leak. What can I do? All right, let it leak. We can patch the roof. All right, we patch the roof, but we don't get upset about it. All right, the nature of the roof is to leak, and the nature of my duty here in serving mother and in serving her children who are living under this roof is that I'll patch the roof and keep my children's heads dry and keep my own head dry. All right. But as we recognize the impermanence, it pushes us to turn away from getting too much entangled here and seek rather the nitya, the eternal within us, and see the impermanent as suffused with divine consciousness. See it as a play, as a lila, and remember always our true nature as infinite, unchanging consciousness and bliss. As Swami Vivekananda would say, none can die, none can be degraded forever. Life is but a playground, however gross the play may be. However we may receive blows, and however knocked about we may be, the soul is there and is never injured. We are that infinite. So, okay, I'll give a final prayer from the Shiva Aparadha Kshamapana Stotram from Shankaracharya, a prayer to Shiva for praying for forgiveness from transgressions. One of my favorite verses from his hymns. Om Ayurnashyati Pashyatam Pratidinam Yati Kshayam Yauvanam Pratyayanti Katah Punarna Divasa Kalo Jagad Bhakshakah लक्ष्मीस्तोयतरङ्गभङ्गचपला विद्युच्चलञ्जीवितम् तस्मान् मां शरणागतं शरणद त्वं रक्ष रक्षाधुना ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Day by day do we come closer to death. One's youth wears away, the day that is gone never returns. Almighty time devours everything. Fortune is unsteady as the lapping of waves on water. A lifetime passes by like a flash of lightning. O Shiva, O giver of shelter to those that come to thee for refuge, protect me who have taken refuge at thy feet. Om, peace, peace, peace.